And okay, theoretically, we are on. So monetization set. Let's go into the control room. Make sure everything's ready here. Mute myself and all. If it loads, it's pre-muted. YouTube's AI is actually doing something useful and remembering settings. Okay. What else we need? Epic Pen. For anybody who intends to do streaming or anything, or even just videos themselves, this thing right here, Epic Pen, is what I and other less professional end streamers and YouTubers use to like draw on the screen and stuff. So you can just literally just Google Epic Pen and you'll get that. And it is free. It will the first option that it will give you when you click download will be for like the deluxe version, which you have to pay for, but just like scroll past that and click the free version and get up Google Earth, or at least I'll click on it once we're going in to use it. Let's see. For anybody who missed the most recent video, if you go look at that, it's U.S. oil production broken down by state. So I finally went into that and made sense. For the U.S. at least, I can get the long period of time individual state by state production data, and thus I'm making graphs for those. Those will be up on the Google Docs document later. But I started making graphs for the production from each individual state, including separate conventional versus shale production, so that you can see the difference between where the sudden boost really obviously came from, which is shale, while conventional production in each case continued down towards zero. And some of those in those videos were not as far back as 1950. I am working on moving all of them back to 1950, but I have gotten most of them now. So the ones that actually get posted up on the Google Drive will be the ones going all the way back to 1950. And while we wait for anyone to actually show up, 2 versus 0, uh, random good news while we're waiting for people to show up. We finally got my mother a new vehicle. She she now has a Kia Soul. This one looks like that won't be the biggest. Where's the biggest actual image? As a creator, so that is copyright. Can we get one that's not copyright? Yeah, so she has a Kia Soul now, as opposed to the ancient Chevy truck from the year 2000. So she has now inverted the numbers she's used to working with from 1.3 or 13 miles per gallon to 3.1 or 31 miles per gallon. At least that's what it was stated that it's not the new Soul, it's a used one from 2015 or 2016. It was stated to get 31. In reality, it's getting like 33 or so, so it is a little bit better than advertised. As is typical with Korean and Japanese vehicles, they do understate their capabilities, just like my dad's previous Nissan Altima, the one that someone ran a red light and crashed into last summer. You guys might remember. So like that one was advertised as only getting 28 miles a gallon when in reality it usually got him 35. His new car that he got after that, after someone destroyed that one, is also a Kia this time, a Kia Forte, and it supposedly only gets 37 miles a gallon, but in reality, he said it was usually doing like 41 or 42. So I've seen that consistent maybe marketing strategy, I guess, with both Korean and Japanese automakers of understating their vehicles' capabilities. So I guess that people are like elated and surprised when it overperforms, and thus that makes them more likely to recommend them and frequently talk about them to friends. But not necessary because I would recommend everyone to either stay Japanese or Korean anyways. Do not touch American vehicles or German vehicles. German vehicles used to be as good as Japanese and Korean vehicles are now, but they're twice the price, and they've no longer felt like maintaining the quality engineering that they used to. And American vehicles are just trash all around. But anyways, that's some personal life good news. My mother finally has a new functional vehicle that's not dead. The truck was basically dead already, but we spent the last 4 years pretending it wasn't. Uh, but it's gone. It's like truly gone. So my dad got her a used Kia Soul for a few thousand, and now we have that, an actual functional vehicle that, you know, gets more than 13 miles a gallon. Like I said, it's averaging about 33. So that's awesome. Anyways, here we go. Now it looks like we have people. Oh, 4 people. I was way overestimating myself, but regardless, that's enough. We will start. Oops, sorry. Knocked something over on the side. Hope that noise didn't come through. Is I looking at? Oh yeah, that's the Cross Power Station. Oh wait, that's more good local news for South Carolina. This is the state that I'm kind of in exile in, living down here at my parents' place ever since I went into exile. So I lived up there in Fairbanks, Alaska, up until, for those who don't know my history, up through the 2010s, up until 2020 happens. And when 2020 happened, the world kind of caved in. So my world was not one of the ones that got restored after that. So I've been in exile for the last 5 years down here in the regular U.S. in a crumbling, decaying, dilapidated state, South Carolina, which has a particularly not all that great, or had a particularly not all that great plan for its power generation future, as they were building a new 2 or maybe up to 3 gigawatts nuclear power plant that would account for the lost generation when the older coal plants around the area shut down. Sorry, I should be using the marker. They were going to build that there, the nuclear power plant. However, they stopped building that after spending five out of the $7 billion and decided that it was a good decision to have gone all that way, not complete it, and then commit to. Thankfully, they haven't yet, which is how they're going to restart the project, like they just announced recently after it's been sitting there for a little while. Thankfully, they didn't actually start or commit to the $3 billion they would have then paid to disassemble everything, and would have ended up spending more in total from having almost finished it plus disassembling it than it would have cost to actually just finish it in the first place. Then also they would have had to, you know, spend a few more $1 billion building like regular power plants somewhere else to make up for the capacity that was no longer going to be installed from that nuclear plant. So, for some reason, state legislature and most of the state residents liked this idea. They thought this was they thought this math kind of worked out somehow. No one down here knows how to do math. It's the South. However, now I put a big smiley face, a big Max O'Gear smiley face. Now, just over the last month, we've gotten great news. Slightly wider at the top for the exclamation point. Got great news out of the state capital in Columbia. They have given the go ahead. They've given the go ahead for the two major power providers in the state to construct, I believe, don't quote me on this location, I believe it's right here, to construct a new 2 gigawatts gas-fired power plant there and a smaller half-gigawatt one up here to replace the aging power generation from 50 or 60-year-old coal plants that are going to be shut down within the next 10 years. And they and the power companies are already like on that. They were waiting for the approval to be passed, but that is already something they've said they're going to build these. And up here, the proposal was put forward to restart uh, and like rework all the stuff on this would have been nuclear power plant up here. And the state legislature actually passed the green light on that in one of the few these combined are the only two smart decisions this particular state's government has ever made. They actually passed the green light on that, so that now the two major power companies can uh, get working together on their collaborative quick study to work with the best approach they're going to go to actually restarting and completing that. So within the next 10 years or so, we'll get the +2, plus 0.5, so plus 2.5, and then plus between 2 and 3, so we'll assume 2.5 for safety, plus 5 gigawatts of power generation to make up for the roughly 3 that we're going to lose from older plants shutting down, and obviously account for the growing power demand of the state as well. So finally, for once in its multi-century life, the state government of South Carolina actually made intelligent decisions. That's probably never going to happen again, though. So hey, I'll take what I can get. Anyways, now that everybody's probably here, we'll start off with everyone's favorite region of the world, right? The Middle East. Who doesn't love the Middle East? The biggest happy smiley face. Who doesn't love it? So if you all remember, you have Israel here, and you got Iran, or Iran, as I am glad many people are now finally saying Iran instead of Iran. Uh, Apparently, the name is just slightly different. It's actually Iran. That's kind of where apparently Tehran comes from. I've seen grammar like that before in other languages, where something like putting the T in front of what would be the name of the country, Iran, makes suddenly turns it in like the letter T alone represents effectively uh, an entire name change of seat of power of or capital of, and then the name of the country, which is Iran. Iran is close enough. Like no one from Iran is or Iran is gonna like is no one's gonna harass you about that. Uh, they will harass you. It's just like Iraqis will about saying Iraq and Iran. But it's Iraq and Iran. So Israel and Iran, had their big exchange. Trump did his usual ego trip and tried to refer it as a 12-day war that he quote unquote ended, even though, as I'm sure anyone who watches or listens to me is probably aware of already, it is not over. It's at a lesser intensity, but these two have still been violating the ceasefire mutually and have been trading strikes with each other back and forth. The difference is that instead of doing like 120 strikes a night on Iran, Israel has been only doing, like single digits, like sometimes 3, sometimes hitting 5 targets. And of course, denying that they're actually doing that and insisting that like it must be partisan groups within Iran. And Iran has still been launching primarily Shahed drone attacks towards Israel, which are not really getting through anywhere. They still have the Houthis occasionally firing stuff, although they would be doing that on their own anyways. And they also have fired some more stuff at U.S. bases and facilities in Iraq, which is, was supposed to be one of Trump's like red lines. So, just in case you're one of the no one who really like is part of that cult watches me, I think, but if you are and actually believe that he had red lines, just so you know, he doesn't actually care. So that's still going on back and forth, along with Israel is continuing with their favorite side hustle activities, which is, of course, bombing Gaza and bombing Lebanon, which has included. Uh, why isn't Beirut showing? Do I have to get closer? Okay. Which has included bombing stuff in Beirut in the midst of, crowded pedestrian streets. But, blah, 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 typical Netanyahu rhetoric of they were all terror sympathizers, therefore they deserve it, or something like that. And then some stuff in the south again, because after saying that they wiped out Hezbollah's arsenal, apparently, just like with having stated that they had totally wiped out Hamas, and then backtracking on that and saying actually Hamas is still there and they're still 40,000 guys and they still have all their rockets. Actually, they're even bigger than they used to be. Now he's doing the same backtrack with Lebanon and Hezbollah. That after bragging about wiping out like their arsenal and their military capabilities, now apparently they have them again or have even more of them somehow because magic, I guess. So that's all going on. Let me drink some water since I'm so congested. Try this one. Are you both synced? We're both okay. Both are the same. All right. Then up here, we're actually back to something we haven't seen for a while. Uh, we're back to having more developments up here with Russia and Ukraine than having down in the Middle East, which has that has not been the case for like the last month or so. But we did have a bunch of stuff here, including multiple Ukrainian drone strikes on Crimea, some of which were regular Beaver drone waves launched from land somewhere within central Ukraine that hit uh, that hit couple a couple of helicopters that were parked at one particular site, along with a air defense system that was next to them, and a smaller storage point of some munitions, likely anti-vehicle missiles or whatever for the helicopters. And then we had a easily foreseeable another new development in drone warfare, which was in the thumbnail for this video, and that is the whether controlled by people on the ground or not. This is the use of large, like personal boat-sized water UAVs or water drones to launch either missiles or, let me do the tail section here, to launch either missiles or or regular, in this case, not beaver ones, but that they would be the smaller, faster ones to do like multi rocket or catapult launches of short range suicide drones after getting in close to a location. Since in this case, it's really beneficial to them because Russia does still have radars and they'd be able, and also noise detectors along the way for hearing the propellers of drones in the air. But on the water, the small water drones are basically dead silent. And also, they don't really have that much, they don't really have that much like water monitoring radar equipment. And also, all of their naval vessels from the Black Sea Fleet, the ones that haven't been sunk, are down in the corner hiding, and others are behind a protective curtain over in Novorossiysk. So don't really have any way to see those coming and stop them. So Ukraine sent a bunch of those that got up close and launched their stuff off the surface, which then went and bombarded a locale in Crimea that had multiple air defense systems and two of the actual large, not dishes, because dishes are when they're round, but the large broader spectrum, but still rotatable square military radars. They took out two of those large ones, along with a few other random vehicles and also just random, maintenance personnel that were on the ground. And then I think it was in Rostov. I believe it was, well, now technically the air base in Rostov is right there or so. But in Rostov, from which Russia uses Su-34s to bomb, do low flight gun runs and bombings of the front lines or ground attack actions. Ukraine was able to launch another one of those hidden infiltrated drone things and destroyed two Su-34s on the ground. Meanwhile, a Su-35 around there or so was shot down, and Su-24, which I'm surprised that they're still using, but they've lost a lot of their better stuff, so actually shouldn't be too surprising they're resorting to that. An older Su-24 was taken down, and also, uh, out. I think it was around here. I'm not positive of the what particular base it was coming into land at, but Russia also lost another Su-34 on all by its own of its own accord when the landing gear failed to deploy, and so they decided to try. That was a really large cockpit. It's like that. The engines like that. So they decided to try for a belly landing on the runway. Didn't really work out so well. Uh, both pilots ended up ejecting, and one did not survive the injuries that he sustained from doing so. And also, the Su-34 aircraft itself was kind of lost in that incident. Wait, wait, wait for it to, wait for it to start out. Come on, Google Earth. There we go. And also, the garage door is opening underneath me. So someone's doing something. and also somewhere over beyond the immediate front, a helicopter base was also hit by a Ukrainian drone strike, and I don't recall the exact models. They weren't Ka-52s anymore because Russia's not out of those completely, but they're pretty low because they've lost somewhere between like 70 and 80 out of 116, I think. But it was two attack helicopters and one larger transport helicopter. So so that also occurred, and was it in Kursk or hold on? So blah blah blah. Uh, oh no, it's in the Moscow region. All right, so in the not Moscow the city, but this whole thing here is the overall region of Moscow. Uh, a a military factory there was nope. Switch back to the mouse. A military factory there was decently hit with black smoke rising from it, and this chemical facility in Belgorod, which is no, this one's Belgorod. This one here is Belgorod. And also over in, I believe it was near Kazan in Tatarstan, which is this one. The one of the two Shahid drone factories that they have took a pretty decent hit with like 2 out of 5 of the production line segments being taken out. So that's going to take at least a few weeks to reconnect everything. All right, that's that stuff. Yeah, and there's satellite imagery and stuff of the air defense system blew up, different vehicles and everything. Syria is becoming less domestically violent, still getting bombed by Israel left and right, but oh yeah, and domestic economy, Russia continues going in fascinating directions. Overall, sales of sales of new trucks for the first half of the year have collapsed by half compared to last year. Sales of passenger cars down by 25% in the first half of the year compared to last year. Buses down over half compared to last year as the cities and stuff around the country are getting less and less money from the federal government because X those off. It is diverting more and more money into the war since it's getting less and less money from oil and gas sales, which is its primary source of revenue. So less money is getting distributed to the cities, and they're having to cut stuff. And their public transport networks are one of the first things they're going for. And also, as the sales of stuff, trucks, cars, and everything keep going down, that's also. Oh no, sorry. I'll do the what's the ruble symbol? It's that, or is it 2 lines? I'm not sure. Uh, that's less and less other tax revenue going back to Moscow. So we're in a ongoing cycle. Oh yeah, and the manufacturers are going to start laying off workers because they're going to start going to non 24-hour factory operations because there's no point in running those 24/7 to keep producing all those vehicles if they're not selling all those vehicles. So that's going to be less people employed altogether, which then means less money being spent economically, which then again means less coming back to Moscow, which means they're going to have to cut even more from stuff that would otherwise be going to, prop up cities, which then will continue to compound the effect. And you get, infinite circular death spiraling. However, after now having nearly almost taken their reserve fund to zero, and in the process monthly of selling off their gold, they're doing the self-borrowing solution. Since no actual customer wants to buy Russian government bonds or take out Russian government debt because they know they're not going to get it back. So who is buying the Russian government's debt and partially for the moment still propping up Moscow? The answer is, hold on, money in from the Russian banks, who are effectively controlled by instruments of the Russian government and is completely subservient to them. So this is the Russian government giving money to itself from itself, aka this is printing money while calling it something different. So it's they've now finally resorted to the Argentina solution, basically. At least, sorry, Argentinian viewers, but that's what you're going to be the most famous for. That's what we're going to call that angle, is the Argentinian solution. So they're now fully delving into the Argentinian solution. Also, as their first harvests are coming in, their grain yields are turning out 20 to 30% lower than last year, which is not the best to hear about. Some videos from the Lebanon airstrikes. Now, Russia itself will be fine. However, uh, their their crop stuff not yielding as much is kind of not the greatest news for a number of other countries, especially their new group of best friends down in Africa who rely on Russian imports for a lot of their grains. So basically, all the members of the unspoken Sahel or Maghreb alliance, along with Sudan and Libya. So that's going to potentially cause maybe some more famine in Africa on top of the famine that is already happening in Sudan at the moment. And in Ethiopia, in the Amara region, which the Ethiopian government is deliberately causing on purpose because they want excuse me, there we go, because they want the Amara people to die, just like they wanted this one up here is Tigray, just like they wanted the Tigray people to die. But they figured if they actually tried to kill everybody, they wouldn't really be able to get away with it. So they stopped after, only killing 2 million people out of 6 million. And like I've said before, give the constant defense at the UN that it's actually okay because they didn't really kill 2 million people. They only killed uh, about 500,000. They only killed 600,000. So it's not really a genocide if you think about it from the Ethiopian government's perspective, at least. But that's going to further exacerbate problems. Uh, Ammunition depots blowing up, more comparative satellite imagery of the aircrafts and helicopters and stuff that were blown up that I talked about earlier. Uh, North Korea, as Russia can't field everyone themselves, we've spoken about that before. North Korea is going to hand over another 30K troops after having first given 10. That's 10. Then given 12. So that's 22,000. Now they're going to give another 30,000 for a total of 52. And somewhere between 11 and 14,000 have been either killed or wounded in some way. And North Korea, or the Kim dynasty rather, has no real care or concern for them. They're getting a deal out of this. They're getting free stuff, like they're getting free grain, free food, free free fuel, gasoline, diesel, refined fuel products, free electricity, probably from the Eastern Russian grid or something, in exchange for gradually sacrificing greater and greater percentages of their military. As North Korea, because of the whole uh, forced 5-year service thing, they do have a rather large, in terms of number of personnel, military. I think they're around 1.5 million. So now throwing in another 30,000 will bring the total, like I said, to 52. So uh, roughly 3.5%, assumably, of their military sacrificed for the reward of free stuff, free grain, free fuel. How high is Kim Jong Un, or Fat Rocket Man, willing to take that? What percentage would be his maximum? I have no idea. Some people think like 10 or 15 might be the cutoff. Others think he's like completely lost the plot and he might be willing to go to like 100%, but we'll have to wait and see. Let me drink some more water. 1 second. Then we have oil and gas developments. A variety and number of them, actually. Sure. Did we get anything from anybody? Hey, Tony, treacherous colonist. I thought you're British. I thought you were Canadian for some reason. Let's see. Okay, so now moving on to oil and gas stuff. So up here, off the coast of northern Norway in the Barents Sea, you have the, call it JC, the Johan Castleberg field. And that, you remember, I spoke about when it first was supposed to come online back in March, but it got delayed through May because of some leaks and improper connections that were detected on some of the undersea pipelines. So those were fixed and restored, and it was finally activated last month in June, and it is now up to full capacity. And Norway had gradually declined back down to 1.98, and so 220,000 onto that. We have Norway now back up at a flat 2.2 million barrels per day. So Norway is continuing, not just continuing to exist, but actually increasing somewhat in both oil and gas production. The opposite of, sorry, Tony, the opposite of a certain island right there, since you guys don't really have that much more to work with, since you already explored all of this, and all of this, except for this little bump right there, all of this, at least the stuff that's on your side, and all of this here. So that little bump and like this bit here is what you really have left. Theoretically, maybe here and the channel in theory, but basically we kind of already know There's nothing there. There might be stuff here, and there definitely will be stuff here in this little bump, which you have just started oil and gas exploration in again, but that process is going to take a few years to A, first start finding stuff, and then B, assess that stuff before it can then be produced. Norway, meanwhile, has indeed explored all of this on their side of it, and parts of this, but not all of it. They still have. Well, let me pull this off here. Yeah, they have these, or rather, sorry, they've explored this part here. Make sure I color in everything appropriately, and a little bit up into there. So they still have all that, except not the deep ocean bed parts. Those don't really usually contain anything. So X that off. And then they have explored portions of their Barents Sea Arctic waters, but still have a huge bit carrying on upwards. So Norway is going to be around for a while, producer wise. And after primarily having done everything onshore in the past, back when Romania, you can see here, you can see the valley coming in like this, and then kind of goes hilly and mountainous here. So you can see the valley basin in here, which is the proper topographic setup for oil and gas to form, is a sort of high surrounded, very low lying basin within reach of water. And but then on top of that, the geology needs to be right, as in the rock layers themselves need to be either porous sandstone or porous carboniferous stuff. If it's not the proper layers, not the proper geology, then the topography does not matter. But Romania did have both, and that's why in the past it was a decent oil producer, especially back during World War II. That's where uh, Germany was getting a lot of its oil from before we got access to Greece and not so secretly some islands off of Turkey that they were unofficially not letting us use. But we, both us and you guys, referring to the UK, bombed the oil fields in Romania, and that was one of the basically unrecognized, unknown to most people in terms of like historic, like key small hidden historical death notes. That was one of the hidden final death notes for the Nazi regime, was getting their oil cut like that. That was one of the final ones that is rarely mentioned. You have to either A, just look that up for yourself, or B, you have to be like a history student in a university, not just taking a generic history class, or like a singular history of World War II class. You have to actually go in depth into like the whole field, where you take like 2 or 3 plus years of specifically just World War II classes before you find people that actually start mentioning this, despite this being one of the actual key coffin nails that sort of helped seal the victory. But that was all onshore. Romania has now recently, in the last number of years, been exploring offshore a little bit in some areas. Not everywhere where they could find stuff down the slope and up to there, but near the shore thus far they have explored, and they found a number of things. It's primarily natural gas, enough to now have them, as of this month, back above 1 billion cubic feet per day. And with a number of new discoveries they just made right at the edge of the explored area, When those come online, those will add another 500,000,000 cubic feet per day or so. And Algeria, with the predominant oil and gas bearing areas, well, the predominant oil and gas bearing areas being this region and then stretching down there, or sorry, stretches all the way to the border here. Technically continues into Tunisia, but Tunisia is not part of Algeria, obviously, so stop there. This whole bit up to about here has been explored. That's where all of Algeria's stuff has been coming from. Now they are starting to actually do more oil and gas exploration down further, and they are already finding stuff. And they also completed all of those capacity expansions I was mentioning a couple of years back, as their major gas fields like Hasir Remel, for example, and a number of others across primarily this eastern portion here, had higher output capacities, but they never had the demand for it because Europe was primarily relying on Russia because that was really smart. So now Algeria was working on the expansions for those capacities, and now their different Europe bound pipeline systems are ready, and they have upped their natural gas production from 10, a cap of 10, to a new cap of 13 billion cubic feet per day. So they're now, in terms of natural gas, they're now pumping out about the same as Norway. So Europe is going to be relying on Norway and Algeria instead of Russia, along with a bit, from Azerbaijan and a bit of LNG shipments coming in from the U.S. Until that is Algeria's capacity goes up even further, since the total ceiling they could get with their current gas is probably about 16 billion cubic feet per day, and they would be able to hold that honestly until around like 2050 or 2060, and they'll be able to get that in another few years. Plus, discoveries that they've already made along the edge, along with new stuff they'll be discovering between now and then. The total add ins that are expected, at least, including these expansions, by 2030 or 2032, should be enough to get them close to a total ceiling of 20, which will predominantly be going up to Europe. Uh, let's see, who else was doing stuff or had just found stuff? Oh, not just found stuff, but questions that were asked to address a question that I partially answered in the in the uh, hold on, my brain works. In the latest video, people asked about the eastern seaboard, this fan slope basin here. We know offshore of western Florida, there's likely not that much because we did actually explore it in the past, and the geology turned out to not be proper. Uh, so most of the oil that Florida did produce came from predominantly onshore when Florida still produced stuff in the past. In terms of the Atlantic shelf, we are not positive, but there is a chance there's stuff there that will require like thorough surveying. We did explore some stuff up around here before and into the Chesapeake Bay there. So up around this area, offshore of and inland water of Virginia. And the stuff that was found there, uh, it looked on the initial seismic surveys like it might be decent. not very large in size, but it might be like decent enough. But when it was test drilled, it turned out to have effectively no porosity whatsoever. And even if it were like sub-sea, like underwater, under seafloor fracked, it would not really have worked out. So we know that little area at least is a no-go. But the main like Atlantic shelf here, maybe, maybe, not positive. Meanwhile, Canada's oil production is still going to be suppressed a bit as there are still wildfires going on in Alberta in various locales. A lot of them have been suppressed and contained now, but there are quite a number that are still burning just too close for comfort. So instead of 5.2, Canada's going to be hanging out around 4.7 or 4.8 for probably another month at least. And what else did we have? Feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, experiment upcoming this year, supposedly, up in the Green River infill formation here. There is one of, I believe it's Exxon doing it, or it might be ConocoPhillips. I hope it's ConocoPhillips because they're just better and have a much better safety track record. But there is going to be a couple of kerogen tests of different methodologies to try to produce oil from the kerogen formations or try to experiment in different ways, testing different like efficiency methods and seeing if there is anything that comes out with, something higher than a 4-to-1 ratio. They're hoping they can find something that maybe might at least go up to like a 6-to-1 or 7-to-1. So we'll hopefully, if those are still scheduled for this year, see how those go through, see what they're able to find out, what kind of data they can discern from that. And feel like I have, I feel like I have some more oil and gas stuff that I'm forgetting about, but I can't remember what it is, which is what happens when you forget. Other than there were some more discoveries in Pakistan. However, despite the nice topography setup they share with India, with this whole basin that then comes out into this plain here, but this whole basin, there's been better stuff on the Indian side, although India's found most of its stuff offshore now. But over even on the Indian side, it hasn't been that great. And in Pakistan, it's been really not great. So like the quality of the geology kind of downgrades as you go over this way, as you move east to west. There is stuff there that is like feasibly extractable, but it's just not sizable, and it's not even with Pakistan's like crippled economy. It's not going to be touching their domestic needs really. All right, yeah, I still have that forgetful feeling, but that's probably going to be how what that's probably going to have to be it. I do have to go check on the neighbor's cats, and I also do want to actually go out walking and picking up trash for the first time in a while. So I'll probably end it around here, and then, or at least I'll wait like another minute for anyone's like comments or questions or super chats or anything. In the meantime, remember, go to any recent video, and in the description, apart from PayPal, Patreon, and photography and Blue Sky links and everything, you can find the Google Drive folder here. You go to that, and it has different folders with different types of graphs covering all kinds of things. You have different graphs for oil data, like oil demand level graphs. And yes, these are all graphs that I made to have like some uniformity to them, and also because I wanted to provide this constant like free access data pool and graph set for anyone who wants it, since almost every website is starting to put stuff like this behind paywalls now. But you got oil data, natural gas data, population demographics, uh, mining, minerals data, electricity, everything. And I will be, as I said at the start of the stream, I will be adding another subsection in the oil data. I will be adding U.S. oil production by state, which I did that most recent video on, where, and I will extend all of these back to 1950s, since that's usually as far as the trustable, reliable data goes. But I do have the graphs and data in that video, and I will be putting them in the folder for U.S. oil production over time by each individual state. In some cases, split between shale and conventional, if it's a state with a shale formation, such as Texas, for example, where you can see Texas's conventional oil obviously continued declining as it continues depleting, but Texas is still pumping out about 700 or 750,000 barrels per day of oil from old conventional fields, even today. That number is going down towards depletion, but some portion of it is still from conventional fields. But the majority, like in many other states' cases, is from this giant shale balloon, obviously. And then there's some in which there was no shale, and it's or shale oil at least, and it's just all conventional, like Louisiana. But I completed the Louisiana back to 1951. Did Oh, I switched colors. Darn. Okay, I have to change it back to purple. But like Louisiana, all conventional, and was once up over 1 million barrels per day back in the 60s and 70s. Kansas, was once up around 200,000. That's not the long-term one. Where's the long-term one? There we go. Kansas was up around 300,000 back in the 1950s. And then some surprise states to some people. Illinois actually was once an oil producer, was up around 200,000. Still need to extend Gulf of Mexico backwards, although it started production from zero in like I think 1971 or 1970, but it's oscillated its way upwards close to two. Colorado, you know, conventional is pretty close down to zero. Most of everything is the shale bubble. But yeah, I did all those, and I'll upload those soon. Let me X all this stuff off. Updates on Namibia. No, as far as I'm aware, as far as I'm aware, the the first the first like actual drilling and construction ship for setting up the seafloor infrastructure at the first fields they're going to produce from will be construction of that ship, and its accompanying ships will be finished in Singapore or South Korea, because they're the two who build everything, next year. And so that ship will be arriving offshore of the first one, at least, will be arriving offshore of Namibia, I think, next year. And the plan, as long as everything is completed on time, is to have that very first field offshore Namibia begin production in 2029, with the others following in quick succession afterwards, so that, again, in theory, if all happens on time, by 2032 or 2033, Namibia would be up to 800 or 900,000 barrels per day, in theory at least. But I do have also in that Google Doc, where's the projections? I do also have projections for future oil production, what I expect each country's trajectory to look like. I might uh, adjust Namibia's a bit closer backwards, like more towards present, as things are going a bit quicker than I initially expected. But given what has been seen from Namibia thus far, it's taken a much more Brazil appearance rather than an Angola appearance, and but also accounting for the lack of offshore shelf size versus the size that Brazil has. It's likely, I expect that at some point around its highest point, probably a couple decades from now, Namibia will end up peaking somewhere around or maybe over 3 million barrels per day. But first one is starting up in 2029, if everything goes according to schedule, at least. So the key thing of whether everything seems to be on schedule will be if that the subsea infrastructure setup ship actually is completed and sails out from Singapore next year and arrives in Namibia. And that's what I was forgetting. So I was forgetting. Uh, sorry, I don't know how that reminded me of Taiwan, but regarding the Taiwan situation, we're halfway into the summer, and there has been no notice of movement of stuff or force buildup, even the early stages of it along the Fujian coast. So it's starting to look like those leaks were right, that came out back in December or January, that they were going to wait until next year. It's starting to look like that. They might do a rush job like soon or something later in the summer at the last minute. That would be unadvisable. That wouldn't work out really well, but they might, to try to play it as best of a surprise as they can. But given where we are now with no signs, it is looking more like it's tipped in favor of them waiting for next year. But we'll see. All right, that's going to be it then for this one. So thank you everybody who showed up, and I will see everybody around next time.